Just a reminder to slow me down to 1.5. We're going to be talking about algebra expressions in this video. One of the most important pieces of information in algebra because it sticks with you all year long. So first we need to know, what is an algebraic expression? It is a mathematical phrase. I'm going to put that in red because we're going to talk about, I thought I was going to put it in red. Phrase made up of numbers and variables. Now, let's look at phrase. We have, in English, phrases and sentences. A phrase is, if I said something like 3 plus 2. There's no equal sign. There's no equal sign. We evaluate expressions because there's nothing to solve. Solve means you have an equal sign. An expression means there is no equal sign. This is a sentence because it has an equal sign. This is just a phrase. It's part of that sentence. So, very important to know that in expression, there is no equal sign. You don't see it. Okay? Now, substitution property, substitution. Let's talk about that for a second. If I'm not here, somebody else is taking my place, right? So, if A equals B, so let's say that I'm A and my substitute is B. Then what happens? That means that B can be replaced by any value for A. It means we just swap them out. If I'm not here, your day doesn't change. My substitute comes in and you go about your business, right? So if A equals B, that means I can just pop it in anytime I want. It means the same thing. All right, evaluating an expression. To evaluate an expression with variable replacements, we substitute, that's why we talked about it, substitute the variables with their given values. Each time you substitute a variable with the number, put parentheses around the number. Now, this right here, the most important rule in algebra. The most important rule in algebra. I will say this phrase about 1 million times this year. The most important rule in algebra. We will use it every single time. And if you follow it, it makes your math life so much easier. So, most important rule in algebra, put parentheses over whatever you're evaluating. And then we just follow the order of operations. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example of those, but these are great vocab words that you need to know. So let's take a look at some examples. Okay. All right. That's not working. Okay. Let's move it up. Maybe I can try it again here. Okay. So, examples. Here we go. Your setup and my setup should look exactly the same. So when I'm grading, I am grading on, don't just give me an answer. That's great that you, and can you do it in your head? Probably. I would imagine. I would hope you can do some of these in your head, most of these in your head. But we are practicing a skill, and the skill is the format setup. Your format needs to be identical to my format, okay? So here we go. Remember that substitution that we talked about. So here's what it means. If A equals 2, that means in place of A, I'm going to put the number 2. What is the most important rule in algebra? Put parentheses around whatever it is you're evaluating. So look what happens. Because there's A, I'm putting parentheses. A is 2. I'm bringing down my B. What's my value for B? 4. So I'm putting 4 in parentheses. I'm closing my parentheses. Notice, this is key. Did I put this exponent inside that parenthesis? Absolutely not. I am only evaluating B is 4. So the exponent goes outside the parentheses, plus, in parentheses, I can put 7. Okay? Your setup needs to look just like that setup. Just like that setup. I'm grading on that. How do you set it up, an expression? Okay, now we just follow the order of operations. So remember, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, PEMDAS. This is an expression. Now, parentheses, yeah, it stands for parentheses. But if you look inside these parentheses, I can't do anything. It's already simplified. So I go to the next one, and I have exponents. I'm going to do exponents. So 4 squared is 16, and everything remains the same. Since nothing's changing, after my setup, I can drop those parentheses because it doesn't affect it. But the setup needs to include it. And now I'm going to multiply before I add. So 2 times 16 is 32, plus 7. 32 plus 7 is 39. Okay? So take a second to do your setup, maybe pause it, and then see if it looks like mine. So I have 3. In parentheses goes my x value, which is -2. The exponent stays outside the parentheses, -4, and then x value is -2. You see that? Only in parentheses is that -2. Only in parentheses is that -2. Now, order of operations. I have to square here. A -2 times a -2 is a +4. Bring down that 3. This here is also multiplication. Now, remember, as the further advanced we get, there are no subtraction signs. It's just integers times integers. So here is how I want you to look at this. It will make your life simpler if you start now. This is a -4 times a -2. It is a -4 times a -2, which is a +8. Negative times a negative is a positive. And now I can multiply 3 times 4 is 12. 12 plus 8 is 20. Okay? Negative times a negative is a positive. These are integers, not subtraction. A -4 times a -2. All right, let's go do a few more examples, and then we'll practice these in class. All right. Okay, I'm going to do numbers 3 and 5. All right, so evaluate. A, put in parentheses 3. That squared goes outside the parenthesis. In parentheses, I'm going to put B, which is -4. I close out that parenthesis. I bring the negative down. And then in parentheses, I put my B value, which is -4. And then I put that squared. Your setup should look just like my setup. Okay? All right, now I'm going to do exponents first. So here I get 3 squared, which is 9, times -4. I'm going to keep that negative sign there. And then I have -4 squared. A negative times a negative is a positive, so I bring down that 16. Okay? And I don't need the parenthesis anymore because I already evaluated. -4 squared is +16, but we already brought that negative down. Okay? 9 times -4 is a -36, and here I have a -16. So remember, when we combine integers, just like we talked about in the fractions, you have -36 and a -16. Everything is still negative. How many negatives do you have? 52. So -52 would be my final answer. All right, one last one that we're going to do is number 5. Hopefully you're setting it up before I get there. We'll just keep it like that. All right. Now, notice this negative is not inside a parenthesis. So I'm going to bring that negative down. Inside my parenthesis is y, which is 2. The only thing inside that parenthesis is whatever value y is, which is 2. Okay? And then I put my exponent. I bring down the negative sign. I bring down the 3. X has to have a parenthesis, and we have -4. And y has to have a parenthesis, which is 2. Your setup needs to look just like my setup. We're going to do exponents first. Here, I want you to circle this. Sometimes students make mistakes, and that's fine. Of course, we're going to make mistakes all the time. Exponents first. This is not a -2 squared, okay? This is 2 squared. 2 squared is 4, and then I've got to bring down that negative. Okay? Now, this is one big multiplication problem. This, I can do the commutative property here. You have a negative 3 times a negative 4 times a positive 2. So I can do negative 3 times negative 4 is a positive 12. 12 times 2 is a positive 24. When you do this big multiplication problem, you do need to put your sign in there because it's going to mean you're combining it with this other term, okay? Because we have one term here and one term here that need to be combined together. So I can do it as one big multiplication problem, but make sure you put that sign there. And when we combine these, I get a positive 20. Not 24, positive 20 is my answer. I'm going to talk real quick. I know this video is getting a little long. I'm going to talk real quick about this right here. What is negative 2 squared? A negative 2 times a negative 2 is a positive 4. Look up here. This is not a positive 4. In algebra, you do exponents first. You're doing 2 squared, which is 4, but you have to bring down that negative. So this is actually negative 4. The only thing you're squaring here is that 2. Even if you type it in your calculator, negative 2 squared, you're going to get negative 4. Okay? And that's what students say all the time, but I put it in my calculator and I got negative 4. Yeah, because all it's doing is it's squaring the 2. However, if you type in your calculator using parentheses, you will get a positive 4. Because what it's doing is it's looking at negative 2 times a negative 2, which equals a positive 4. Okay, so just caution, word of caution there for you.